Hi, everyone.
Hello.
Welcome back to Leading the Charge. Tom, your seat is ridiculously high.
Is it? Well,
yeah, but you know what? If you go, you'll go too far.
I know.
down,
That's
so I would just
we do
leave
this.
it, I
We
guess.
do this every time with the show, and then
Yeah.
people have started to look. I'm like eye level with Jeff Russo now, which should never ever be the case.
Tom is actually 6'5". You didn't know. All right, we have to say a quick break now. We're going to pop out on TV in about 10 seconds. Obviously, send us your questions. We'll answer them as we go.
Yeah.
Welcome back to Leading the Charge, y'all.
Let's do it.
Well, it is good to be back. What's going on, everyone? Welcome to another edition of Leading the Charge, our first Monday Leading the Charge since the day after the AFC Championship game. So not necessarily great vibes when we left off, but boy, do we got stuff to talk about today.
I would call it an immaculate 180 in terms of vibes, but yeah, kind of like it was the last Monday, Matt. We do have a lot to get to and a lot of different things that we could kind of steer the direction of the conversation.
I feel like Cheryl says, you guys look like so much fun. I mean,
yeah,
I think so.
You're right, Cheryl.
If you're watching, you would hopefully agree. I am sitting at my stove this morning, so I do one of two things. We're getting the baby ready for kind of the day. So I'm making her breakfast. She always likes scrambled eggs. There's two things that we listen to. We listen to the Happily Ever After Walt Disney World fireworks.
So do I. Yeah.
Or WGR 550. This morning, it was WGR 550 sitting there. It's 8:30. I got the eggs. You know, you take them off the heat. You get the nice whisk going. All of a sudden, Brandon Beane comes on, guns a-blazing. That's definitely the topic of conversation today for most Bills fans.
Well, and my routine in the morning is a little bit different. I don't have a child, so I wake up a little bit later than Matt. So I'm down working out, and then I get a text in our group message with our friends from Wham, and it's all these things like Beane's going nuclear on GR. Did you hear this? So I instantly pop it up, and kind of how your reaction, your jaw dropped. This was probably 2 hours after the moment. My jaw as well dropped.
Yeah. I mean, it was certainly animated.
Yes.
There was certainly a lot of kind of like frustration that I would say is let out. We're
For
going
sure.
to save more of the conversation for a little bit later in the show. We're actually going to be joined by Howard Simon, who would have been sitting in that seat.
I could
John says he
only
was
imagine.
pissed. Yeah, I mean, Beane certainly had an edge to him this morning. The conversation that I think set Beane off was the question whether or not the Bills have enough talent at the wide receiver position. Now, admittedly, I have been somebody who has said several times, I think that they need to add another wide receiver. Now, that's a conversation for later on. We'll get to that in a couple minutes. We do need to talk about the draft because they just had a draft. It's something we talk about for months and months. Just give me your general take on the draft and how you think they did.
So I've only covered the team with you here for about 3 years now. So small sample size.
Yeah.
This is the best Beane draft, in my opinion, because I think the defensive needs were so glaring. Again, save that wide receiver conversation for a little bit. The defensive needs were so glaring for me. And I thought within those first 3 picks, for me, on my most important positions, cornerback, defensive tackle, edge rusher, 1, 2, 3. And you go back and look at some of the expert and these analysts that come back and look at the drafts after. The Bills have exceptional value basically on Max Harrison and TJ Sanders and Landon Jackson especially. Like there is a guy like Landon, he wasn't supposed to be there in the 3rd round. The Bills probably could have used one of those 2 seconds and end up trading away, but he was there in the 3rd round. So I really like this draft from Beane. I can understand why people want to have more offense, but the glaring need was defense because, again, on offense, Josh Allen's going to get you through a lot more headaches as compared to what he can't do on defense. You don't have somebody who can make those playmaking abilities.
Yeah, and John says here, they did need defense for sure. I agree, John. I agree with your point. Obviously, if you have comments, fire them off. We'll get to a bunch of them tonight. My big thing was that I think the defense has been kind of what has failed them in the biggest moments, right? Like there are times when you need a little bit more out of the offense, but specifically the defensive line has no-showed. And then last year, once Christian Benford got injured in that game against the Chiefs, they almost had like no shot in that game. It just looked like the corners they had out there could not kind of pull weight. So it's not a surprise that the 2 positions that they targeted were on the defensive line and were at cornerback. Now, once again, we'll get to the receiver conversation in a little bit, but I do think that they almost needed to do this. It felt like this was inevitable. They had to do this, swallow the medicine now, and then eventually you go back and you get the playmakers because without a strong defense, like I feel like they're going to keep running into the same hiccups.
Same thing. It's going to be Groundhog Day. But again, like I think the one word I've seen a lot from the last couple of days of recapping, it wasn't a sexy draft, right? Like last year, the big hype was all about wide receiver, right? And then they go into the second round early. They get Keon Coleman. That was the big name. That's your playmaker that you really want to see step up. This, you're not really looking at the high-flying, big attention-grabbing picks when you're going cornerback, defensive tackle, edge, defensive tackle, defensive back. Oh, and then your second, fifth-round pick is your first offensive player when they took Jackson Hawes from Georgia Tech.
A blocking tight ends, too.
A blocking tight end. So, again, it wasn't a sexy draft, but it was a necessary draft for the Bills in terms of what's going to set them up for what I think is the success they finally need to have to turn the corner, to erase the deficiencies that we saw in that Kansas City AFC Championship game. I always go back to that, and that's why I thought the first 3 rounds were about as good as Beane has done, at least in my time.
Yeah, let's pop up this comment from John Robert at the bottom here about Jordan Hancock, listed as a cornerback, but he played safety. So let's kind of go through some of the different picks here. So with Jordan Hancock specifically, that was the first pick they made in the 5th round. Yes, you were right, John. He is listed as a corner, but he said, Brandon Beane told us he is going to start as kind of a safety / nickel cornerback. What I think this is a younger, cheaper, probably a bit more athletic Cam Lewis, what he has been for this team for the last several years. Now, they still like Cam Lewis, but I think they are trying to figure out if they can get younger and maybe a little bit more athletic at some of those positions. So that's a pick to point out. I really like Dorian Strong, the 6th round pick. He's going to be a boundary guy. I just feel like you can never take too many have enough flyers on types of those boundary guys. And then my favorite pick that they made is Landon Jackson in the 3rd round. You briefly talked about it. I think we got some video of Landon Jackson. This dude is just kind of a monster from like a physical build athleticism standpoint. He's 6'6". He's got some edge rushing prowess. Like, there's a lot of things that he can do well. So I am just overly impressed with the value they were able to get with Landon Jackson. You can see him right here. Like, this is somebody that when the mocks started, people thought the Bills could take him at 30. And then it was like, no, he's probably more of a day 2 guy. To get him where they did, especially after trading up for TJ Sanders, that he was still on the board, I think was a real pleasant surprise for the Bills front office. I don't think they expected that.
No, but I also think when you look at some of the picks, and I agree with you, and I really like Max Harrison. I really like their first pick when I go back and look at some of his tape because they brought in a speed element that we can get into in a second. But you and I talked about this when we were at the draft, Matt. It's clear the Bills now have an identity shift on their defense. It is size, it is youth, and it is absolutely going to be this, like, we're going to try to punch you in the mouth kind of football. No longer are we going to get bossed around in the trenches when it comes to defense. They're going to bring in guys that I think over the next years are going to hopefully, as they would like to, develop into the guys that kind of shape this new identity, this new wave of what a Bills defense is going to look like.
Yeah, Julia, can we throw up the graphic again of all the draft picks that they made, just so we can kind of tie the loose ends here with some of the other players that they selected? So we did not mention Chase Lunt. That's an offensive tackle from UConn. Depth guy, project, see what he turns into. He's 6'7", so he's certainly got the size.
1-year crossover with Ryan Vandemark.
Yeah, UConn, so there's a bit of familiarity there. And then Caden Prather is the one wide receiver that they did take. That was the last pick. They think of him probably as more of a vertical threat project speed guy from Maryland. Who knows what he turns into? I don't know, but I do think that for the most part, what I was saying the last couple of days, I like this draft class. Like, I really like the draft class. I don't love the draft class just because I do think that there was one notable thing missing, which, of course, is the wide receiver conversation that has generated a ton of buzz today. So that is definitely something we'll get to. There's a lot of good questions here. Sherry says, we don't need a wide receiver. We have good guys. They need to step up. Definitely the D needed help. Sherry, I agree that there are guys that on the roster already that need to step up, but this almost forces them to step up, right? Like, because if they don't, there's not a ton of depth behind those players.
Yeah, there's a part of it. I look at a guy like Keon, who McDermott and Beane have been very vocal and adamant about that they need to see more out of him this year. So if that lights a little fire under him, so be it. That's great. But that's also a hindsight's got to be a 2020 conversation here. I said this when we were doing our newscast earlier, is the Bills definitely don't need a wide receiver one. I think their offense is already good enough. They showed that last season. You have Josh Allen. But you can also just say that, like, hey, they're going to also be exponentially better if you have that piece there. Like, you can always find a way to improve your offense. If you have a Lamborghini, why not upgrade the Lamborghini and put some big rims on that boy? Just do something.
All right, John has another comment here. Deion Walker is a one tech, I believe. So, John, this is a little bit of gray area. Now, not to get too much into the weeds, I don't think he's a true one tech. Like, a true one tech is a big run stuffer who just kind of swallows up blocks and lets everybody else around them kind of generate pressure. He is going to be somebody who can generate pressure. Now, he has the size of a true one technique. So I think the Bills are going to try and untap some potential there,
right?
But also know that they value so much interior pressure from the defensive line. That has been a theme for them really over the course of their years. They got a type that they like.
Well, given how much they rotate on the line too, it's like you want a guy who's a little versatile so you can start picking and kind of plugging them along.
Yeah, the Deion Walker conversation with Beane was interesting because he said 2023, he had a first-round grade on Deion Walker, but then last year, the play really slipped. Now, they found out at the Combine that it was because of a back injury. So the back injury certainly held him back. Hey, we'll be here all week. So they obviously need to figure out if it was the back injury that was the main problem or if he just did not have as productive of a year. They're taking a flyer. It's a 4th-round pick. I understand you go with the upside. You go with the intangibles. Can't teach 6'7".
Max Harrison called the shot too.
Right?
You know?
It was just another Kentucky guy. All right, here's Justin. I'm excited, but do not want to rush summer too fast. Go Bills. I think most people probably agree. But now we're kind of entering the sweet spot because the weather's nice. Like during February and March, you got to talk about the Bills because you need something to talk about while you're stuck and cooped inside. Now we got some nice weather. We can get outside and get on the golf course a little bit.
Ooh, I'm telling you what, I took a nice big deep breath when I walked out today. And
it was beautiful today.
Oh, we're going to talk about that WGR call coming up soon.
All right. Well, there's the transition. If you were watching on the TV side of things, we are going to take a quick break. If you're watching online, don't go anywhere. We'll continue the conversation, and we'll be right back in a couple minutes. Hey, can we throw Howard in for a sec?
Mr. Howard Simon.
Hello, Howard Simon.
What's going on, boys?
How are you?
I'm good. How you guys doing?
Good. I can't hear Howard on the IFB, everybody. I don't know if that's an issue that we need to figure out, but I just wanted to give everybody a heads up that I cannot hear Howard. Can you?
Nope, I cannot either.
All right. Hey, control room. Mike, Howard, can you do a mic check?
Test 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Dom Tibbetts deserves a raise. 7.
Dom
8,
Tibbetts deserves
9,
a raise. So
10.
we are on live right now, but I can only hear you on my computer. I can't hear you on my IFB. So Howard, we're gonna bump you backstage again. We're gonna play the clip from this the morning show. Somebody said, what's a Dom Tibbetts? That's a funny comment. And then we'll bring Howard back in. Hopefully we can get this audio thing figured out.
Gotta fix my collar.
Guys in the control room, hopefully you guys can communicate to me. All right, thank you. Let's see here. TJ Sanders says now that he weighs 310 pounds. I think I can show this on screen. Bang, I can. Look at this. What's a Dom Tibbetts? That's the lovely guy with the hair right there.
Yeah, he's a 28-year-old guy, born and raised in Syracuse, now works in Buffalo. Good guy, good personality, is very funny, and some say does deserve a raise.
Yeah, that's what they say. All right, John. TJ Sanders says he now weighs 310 pounds. So TJ Sanders was the second pick that the Bills made. They traded up to get him.
Yep.
He said he prefers to kind of play around 300, 305.
Leaner.
I think he weighed 297 or something like that. True pass rusher from the interior defensive line. Somebody who I think they believe can really make an immediate impact.
I don't think he's also, you looked at a couple defensive tackles that we had mocked and we did these prospect profiles on. You heard a lot of comparisons when I was in Indianapolis for the Combine, Matt. You heard, oh, he's going to be like an Ed Oliver. He's the Ed Oliver. Well, remember like Walter Nolan, who obviously got drafted higher, was like the biggest comparable to Ed Oliver. I like that. I think TJ Sanders is just kind of his own guy. I think there are similar traits.
Okay. All right, so Dom's going to welcome back. So So you're going to welcome back. I'm going to disconnect from this for a minute, and then I'm going to do this.
Okay.
I'm going to connect the Bluetooth here. So I'm going to be basically the one having the conversation.
30 seconds to get connected. The beauties of, well, I guess not live TV right now, but streaming. So, but yes, I to finish that point, I like TJ Sanders. I think he brings something that's going to be unique a little bit with some qualities that guys like Ed Oliver have shown promise in up in the Bills defensive line.
All right, you're going to intro us basically, just because you're going to be the one that can hear.
We're going to come in and then I'm going to be like, okay, and this is Brandon Beane.
Yeah, exactly.
10 left. 10
All right. We'll be right back on TV, guys. If you're watching on the stream, we'll be back up in 15 seconds.
All right, well, welcome back to Leading the Charge, everybody. Here back on a Monday. I'm Dom Tibbetts. That is Matt Beauvais. Howard Simon's going to join us in just a little bit. But in case you didn't hear, big morning over on WGR 550. Brandon Beane calls in on a scheduled call in the Jeremy and Joe show with our mutual friends, Jeremy White and Joe DiBiase. And let's just say Beane came in and he was heated.
You guys were in 2018 about Josh Allen. You guys wanted Josh Rosen, and now you guys are that we don't have a receiver. Our job is to score points and win games. Where do we need to get better? Defense. We did that. So I get it. You got to have a show, and you got to have something to about. But about wide receiver is one of the dumbest arguments I've heard.
So imagine, first off, their reaction is that's happening.
Mhm.
My reaction is I'm making the scrambled eggs. I'm sitting there with Ellie, and I'm like, whoa, you're going to have to wait for your scrambled eggs for a second. Things just got pretty spicy.
Yeah.
Howard, you don't have to wake up anymore super early, right? Were you listening live?
No, but
when I woke up,
I became aware of something that had happened on the show. GR sent out the clip. I mean, I started to watch it. Honestly, I stopped after he brought up 2018 because I knew where he was going with the rest of his comment. By the way, I'm the guy who said, let's go get Josh Rosen. Yeah, I've got opinions on it. Some I'd be happy to share. Some I'm going to keep to myself.
Yeah, I totally understand that. But just kind of what is your I was shocked. We don't hear Brandon talk like that. It felt like he really let out some frustration, and Jeremy and Joe were just kind of the first person he could have the conversation with.
Yeah, look, I mean, I'm going to take the media side. I'm going to take Jeremy's side because I worked with him for 18 plus years, and I think he's personally fine, everything he's doing. Look, I mean, I didn't like it. Yeah, it's very unlike him to do that. I'm not sure that he's ever, I mean, I hear that and it's kind of like a personal attack. And I don't think he's ever done that to a single media member. Matt, you'd know better. You're at all of his press conferences since he's been here. I don't remember anything like that happening. Look, I get it. It's, he figures everybody's going to be happy. They did what they needed to do. And I'm happy. The draft addressed big needs for them. Well done. But it doesn't mean you can still have an opinion and go, hey, by the way, I thought they would take a wide receiver before the last round. By the way, your wide receiver room, it could be better. There's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, that's the thing that I'm struggling with because I do feel like it's a warranted criticism. Now, I understand what he is saying, right? That the defense in their mind is what has failed them over the course of the last couple of years. So I totally understand that. Yep. But there are a lot of valid points as to why they need another wide receiver, or at least a lot of us think they need another wide receiver. I am somebody who has asked Brandon Beane that question. Now, he has not gotten anywhere close to as testy with me as he did this morning. So I feel like he probably was just fed up because this has been something he's been asked a lot over the course of the last couple of weeks. But I was just shocked to see it play out the way that it did.
So part of the fun of having that job was the ability to not necessarily read between the lines, but give your opinion of what you think the guy just said.
Yeah.
So here's what I would have said. It would be, for me, and this doesn't mean what he was thinking, guys. I'm just telling you what I think. To me, that's a GM who says, hey, guys, we've averaged 30 plus points a game every year. Have you been watching? Do you know how many points we give up in the 4 playoff losses to Kansas City? An average of 34 points a game in the playoff loss. What do you want from me? It's the defense. Like, that's what I think he was saying.
Yeah, go ahead.
But that doesn't mean you don't
wide
look
receiver
to get
argument. We
more
can talk a
weapons
whole
for
show
Josh
about
Allen.
this, Howard. But I guess we.
Go ahead. You're good. It's like everybody's talking at the same time.
Oh, okay. All right. Sorry. Well, it's tough because I can't hear Howard. But going off of that too, Howard, like, if you look at this room, you look at the potential if they bring in a free agent, like Elijah Moore was a big name coming up today too. Like, realistically, for somebody who is on Brandon Beane's side, who thinks that the offense is just fine, on like, I don't know, a scale of like an A to an F, how do you feel the wide receiver room carries this offense in? Like, are you ready to press the panic button if they don't bring in somebody? Or could you see this offense having similar success that they did last year if they kind of just continue to roll with the everybody eats mantra?
Yeah, you know why the offense will have continued success? The guy who's at quarterback. This is not rocket science, fellas. When Tom Brady left New England, we looked around and said, they had Gronk. I mean, they had some good weapons when he was there, no question. But he left, and we looked at them and thought, man, they really don't have much talent there on their offense. I'm not saying the Bills are that. The Bills have a good wide receiver room. Good. That's as far as I'm going to go. It's not an A grade. I don't even think it's a B grade. I have a man crush on Khalil Shakir. He's the number 1 wide receiver. I get the whole everyone eats thing. Dom, I heard you say this earlier. I like a number one wide receiver. I like a stud that scares the living daylights out of another defensive coordinator.
Howard, I don't want to make the entire conversation with you strictly about the wide receiver room because there was still an entire draft.
Yeah.
What did you think of it? What did you think of the entire class?
You know what? In all my years of predicting drafts, I've never gone 3 for 3 on the first picks. This was exactly what they needed to do, right?
Yes.
This draft screamed 3 positions. We all looked at 3 picks on day 1 and 2 without any kind of maneuvering and thought, whatever order, cornerback, defensive tackle, edge. And what did they do? Cornerback, defensive tackle, edge. So, I mean, first 5 picks, I get it. They needed to bring in a guy who could hopefully start at corner on day 1. They needed to bring in an infusion of youth and someone you could pair long-term next to Ed Oliver. And they needed to improve their pass rush because if you watch the Super Bowl, that's how Philadelphia beat Kansas City, and the Bills' pass rush needed to be better. So I thought they had a terrific draft. I loved what they did defensively.
Howard, I don't love draft grades, but I have these cool paddles that have different grades on them. Same. What grade would you give the Bills?
Oh, I thought you were grading out Dom's performance on the show. I thought that was about us, actually. I didn't realize
that would be F. Failure.
You can't hear me. All right.
What would you do?
I'd give him a B. I think, again, I'm not sure I could ever give an A to anybody, but I thought they did a really good job of assessing their needs, getting what they needed, and bringing in some key talent to make this defense better next season because it's got to pick up its act.
I would give you an A, Howard. I appreciate you jumping on the call tonight. We miss you. Nice hat. Good job. Well done. Good brand awareness.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
How's that sunburn?
The check's in the mail. Thank you, Howard. All right, on the TV side, we're going right back. Thanks, Howard. Appreciate you.
Anytime. We'll see you.
See you soon.
Yep.
All right, now I have to do this. You can talk for a minute just because I'm going to.
No, for sure. So what Howard said, he gives it a B.
Yeah. The amazing part about the television and technology thing is that Dom did not hear a word of what Howard just said. He actually was saying that, there's one guy really holding the show back and that we kind of need to find a new co-host.
Oh, wow.
He was talking about me.
Good. No, Howard's sturdy supporter of the GDR campaign. No, but honestly, it's funny. I'm not trying to copy Howard. I was actually talking in a group chat with some buddies who are from the area, big Bills fans, and they asked me for my grade, and I said B.
Well, save it. That's the end of the show.
Oh, well, I mean, we're here.
We're here.
Well, I didn't know when we were getting to it, so I'm sorry.
No, you're okay.
Well, you know what? It's a little sneak peek for the folks who have tuned in here on the Leading the Charge stream. Minute 30 left.
Okay. All right, we got 4 minutes left. We'll talk about Elijah Moore coming up on the other side of the break, just because I do think we should. Dom's been preaching about Elijah Moore, and then we will end with some draft grades here. If you have any last-minute questions, we see a bunch of people in the comments. We certainly appreciate it. Thanks for the patience tonight. We're trying to figure out some of the kinks. We haven't done this in a couple months.
I know we're getting back, knocking some rust off a little bit though, but feels good. It feels good because obviously now there's no stress. We're not getting ready for the nerves of an AFC championship game. We're not talking to you after we're coming off a huge high after some big win or a soul-crushing defeat yet again. The vibes are right in the middle, coming off a draft that we both thought was pretty good for the Bills. It's about as good vibes as we've had on a recent Leading the Charge.
Absolutely. But our boss did text us one thing, and it was to move your water bottle. So that's why I did it. It's over here. You'll get it back after class. All right, 10 seconds left. All right, welcome back, everyone, to our final segment on this episode of Leading the Charge. A couple months ago, before free agency started, Dom and I went through a couple different players we thought the Bills could target.
We did.
I picked Joshua Palmer, signed.
Boom.
Dom picked Elijah Moore, visiting. Yeah. Let's go. Could be 2 for 2. What do you think about Elijah Moore?
I've liked Elijah Moore. So the whole context of the conversations, we were looking at guys, and Elijah got brought up in the heat of the DK Metcalf kind of rumors.
Sure.
But what I liked about Elijah Moore significantly more than at the time was DK. But now, just in general, he's young, 24 years old. He is going to be relatively inexpensive. You're looking probably under $3.5 million a year. He is extremely fast. He lines up as a slot guy more. So I know people are like, well, we have a Khalil Shakir. We don't need this. We need the vertical threat. That's where I think the big physical tall threat. That's a Josh Palmer or a Keon Coleman to me. But I think the way you saw Jameis Winston and this Cleveland offense use him a lot last year was kind of taking the big shots, stretching the field over the boundary, over the middle of the field. He also, Matt, has had 100 targets in each of the last 2 seasons. Khalil Shakir is the only Bills wide receiver that eclipsed 100 this past season, I believe.
Yeah.
So, I mean, right off the rip, I just like from a production standpoint what he could bring there too. And it's just obviously goes back to the conversation of the GR call this morning. The timing was just beautiful for that news drop from whatever. And then
Jordan
I think,
Schultz,
from
yeah,
Jordan
had it
Schultz,
first.
and then Beane confirmed it on One Bills Live today. And just the timing of it was immaculate. But if it works out and it happens, I think it'd be a great addition for the Bills.
Yeah, Amari Cooper, Frank just asked, is there any hope to bring back Amari Cooper? Frank, I don't think so. I feel like they would like this move, the Elijah Moore move, maybe more than the Amari Cooper move. I think once Amari Cooper got here last year, the expectations from including us were pretty high. I just think he's lost a step. I don't think he's quite the player he once was.
Right.
That's why I think they need somebody who's got a little bit of long speed, can generate some separation. I mean, John, right here, Elijah's 40 is 4.3544. Like, he's a quick player. He can separate. He can get down the field. He's not like a pure home run hitter.
No.
He's also 25 years old. He's played with the New York Jets and the Cleveland Browns. You know what would unlock his untapped potential? Coming to play with the most valuable player in the NFL.
And that's partly when I made this Instagram video, which you can check out over on our Leading the Charge Instagram page. But I said, though, it was like Mac Hollins had a good year with the Buffalo Bills, a better year than any of us anticipated, because that's the Josh Allen effect. So you bring in a guy who has this little bit of untapped potential. I'd love to see kind of what Josh Allen, Joe Brady could cook up for.
All right, 1 minute. Give us hold up your draft grade for the Bills.
Well, I gave it a little tease to the folks here. I'm going to go B, just a straight B. That's for me. I thought they addressed every defensive need, but I am a little bit in the wide receiver room where I'm like, you could have went up and got a little bit more versatility, somebody who's a bigger offensive playmaker to really put this Bills offense over the edge.
All right, I'm going to go with, that's a tease, A.
Oh,
I actually think that this is exactly what they
Matthew.
needed. It would be an A+. I'm trying to figure out how to do this. It would be an A+, thank you, if they would have drafted a wide receiver. But I really like that they just kind of swallowed their pride, did what they needed to do. They rebuilt their defensive line. Like, they needed to do that.
Yep.
They probably are in a Super Bowl last year if they have a better defensive line or more depth at cornerback.
Yep.
Now they've addressed both of those. All right, welcome back, everybody, to Leading the Charge. We're excited to have you. That is Dom Tibbetts. Thank you to Howard Simon for joining. Michelle and Julie in the control room. I'm Matt Bovee. Have a lovely evening, everyone. We'll see you next week.
Oh, I wish there was a G and an R.
Bye, everybody on the stream. Thank you for joining us.
Bye, everyone.
Hey, once again, we appreciate the patience here. It's been a little while, so I know that there was a couple minor technical difficulties, so we appreciate the patience. Thank you for watching. We're going to be back doing this on Monday nights again, so the content does not stop. So have a lovely evening. Have a great week. We'll see you guys next week.
Bye, everyone.
Bye, y'all.